To give the background to Seeds of Healing for those who are watching, we are a nonprofit organization that serves the Wilmington area community. Our mission is to educate, raise awareness, and end stigma towards those living with HIV. We also seek to generate support for women living with HIV. Today, I will be interviewing Mr. Joseph and Miss Tiffany Conway. This interview seeks to learn more from those who serve as patrons of Seeds of Healing and gain insight from those who play a valuable role in our efforts. Mr. Conway and Miss Conway are both frequent patrons of Seeds of Healing. Mr. Conway has been and currently is the Director of Health Equity and Human Experience at New Hanover Regional Medical Center. Miss Conway is the Student Placement Program Coordinator at UNC School of Medicine. I would like to first start off by asking a little bit about yourselves and your professions.
Tiffany, you can go first.
Okay, well, great. I have been here in Wilmington for about 13 years and have worked kind of in the education field with Southeastern area AHEC, and then moved over to my position when we became an accredited campus for UNC School of Medicine. So we have an accredited campus here in Wilmington for third and fourth year medical students. And then I have a background history of being a teacher and also just general office assistant, but have been in healthcare for quite a long time. So just non-clinical.
And I got here about 6 months before her because obviously we're married, but I came, checked out the area first from the same market that we were in. Part of my background is I am an ordained minister, so former pastor, church leader, and music leader, all that other kind of good stuff, but fell in love with healthcare because my wife told me to. She had a good friend who was a CNO of a hospital. They needed some help from their EVS or housekeeping standpoint, and told him I was too busy. I liked the church ministry. I liked what I was doing. And so she made me apply anyway. And here I fell in love with healthcare from that moment forward. Different kind of ministry for sure. And I mean that in all sincerity. So I've been in healthcare ever since. That was about, geez, I want to say it's 2003, 2005, somewhere in there. Came up here, arrived here in 2007, and started in the EVS operations department. Eventually became a Lean Six Sigma strategist for our organization, a facilitator and coach. And that's how we identified health equity was one of the things that our organization wanted to work on. And so the inaugural position of Director of Health Equity and Human Experience was created, and put my application in, and here I am. So I've been on this journey since, believe it or not, September the 11th, 2017. So I'll never forget the day I started because of what that also means to, just that date alone means to our country. But learned a lot along the way, love exactly what I do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that intersects with a lot of different pathways in healthcare equity.
Yes, absolutely.
I guess I will first want to discuss the subject of HIV awareness. For those living with HIV, they often face stigma from society and also internally. What would you like those living with HIV to know regarding the stigma they face?
So those that live with HIV, or those that kind of look at those who live with HIV?
For those living with HIV.
So, I'll be honest with you, those living with HIV, I think are most attuned to the stigmas that they face. Many times they may not even want to identify that they have it. And if so, it may be with a trusted source. I think that's one of the things that's lacking in our area are those trusted sources where those stigmas are often removed, and they can feel like they can get the appropriate care. One of the things I would like for them to know from, at least from my home and from me personally, is, there, as far as I'm concerned, there's no stigma within myself or my family. And even what I try to do here professionally, if nothing else, to create an environment where they feel safe, and they want to seek and get the appropriate care that they need. HIV is nothing new to healthcare. And I understand it may have started with a lot of misinformation, and that misinformation is still out there today. But I think the more and more we can bring forth a message that, challenges those narratives and, kind of sets the ship, if you will, aright, so that these folks can get the appropriate care. I think that is really paramount to everything that Seeds of Healing does. And as well, I don't want to expound on it too much, but I mean, it's clearly a challenge to certain demographic communities that keenly need to be aware of some of this that's going on. And if we don't get our hands around it, it'll permeate further than it already has.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of healthcare disparities that exist and overlaps with everything.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you would like to add, Ms. Conway?
No, I think Joe said it really well. To be honest with you, my mind more went to those in the community looking at those that are dealing with HIV and AIDS. Because we were of the generation back in the 80s when kind of AIDS and HIV made itself known, if you will. And so there definitely was a lot of stigma then. And I remember being actually a teenager when the story of Ryan White came out, and hearing about that. And even in high school did a research paper about it, and there was so much that was not known, and we know a lot more now than we did. But I think there's still a stigma that is attached to it that creates a disconnect between community members being able to reach out to their neighbors and others in the community, so that we can kind of have a cohesive effort around this, which then of course would lend to more opportunities for resources and healthcare providers being able to do things. Because I think especially, I would say, my age and older, they remember, 40 years ago, and the things that were said about what the disease was and who was getting HIV and AIDS. And that has never left them, nor have they necessarily desired to get more information and educate themselves on the truth about HIV and AIDS.
That's right.
So, I know for us, when we had the pleasure of meeting LaShonda, and of course, Joe met LaShonda long before I did, but just her passion and her personal story around why Seeds of Healing was started very much resonated with both of us.
Yeah, she has a powerful story behind the founding of Seeds of Healing. And I think creating like a strong support network is crucial in the treatment plan of those living with HIV.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Mrs. Conway, you mentioned growing up when the epidemic first started. What has astounded you most about the innovations that have come forth as a result? Like now there's existence of pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, and increased awareness. What has astounded you most?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of really good things that astound me. I think just the metamorphosis of the different types of treatments that can be used, as you mentioned, the PrEP, and back in I don't even know what, because I'm not clinical, I don't even know what is still used, but I want to say that one of the first things that came out years ago was AZT. I'm not sure if that's still even used today, but I think that there's been a lot of innovation and moving forward of finding effective treatments for those living with both HIV and AIDS. I think the other thing that is most encouraging is again, this is speaking of the way it was originally viewed, is it's not seen as quote unquote the death sentence it was originally portrayed and viewed back in the 80s and 90s when it first was made known. I think one of the things that on the opposite end that I thought was so amazing, not necessarily in a good way, but maybe a year or two ago, that, again, I mentioned Ryan White. He was a hemophiliac that received or contracted HIV with a blood transfusion. And of course, the Red Cross and the medical field did a lot to try and do screening so that hopefully would not happen. And I want to say it was maybe a year or two ago that the Red Cross just announced that they would stop restricting people in the LGBTQ community from donating blood. And
Right.
I thought that was very astounding that here we are, again, 40 plus years later, and we've made so many advances, and yet somehow the view that a certain group within our community was being restricted from donating. And so I think that was the thing that was surprising on the other end. I was glad to hear that it was announced, but I was actually shocked to know that that was still a restriction for donating blood to the Red Cross. But again, I think there's a lot at my own, personal views, just through, educating myself and learning, has also changed, which I think is a good thing. Education can be a very good thing. Joe and I talk about this often. As long as you're willing to put it into practice, then education is a good thing.
That's right.
So anyway, that's my those are my thoughts on that. Joe, any thoughts?
Well, you stole mine because, I was like you when we found out the information about, here's a restriction on an entire population and community based on what, right? I mean, it was just so restrictive. And to have that lifted, I mean, it was almost like the common sense thing to do. If you're already testing, what difference does it make that the person is a part of, the LGBTQ community or any other community for that matter? Because I know, a lot of the transmission initially was through, IV drug use too, or sharing of needles, those kinds of things. And I think that, that I struggle because, I mean, I literally just had a conversation via, message or whatever with a former colleague who still wanted to go down the path of this is a disease that's wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for the LGBTQ community. And I just found the statement so challenging and full of ignorance that, I mean, I was emotionally upset. And this is where, Tiffany was keying in on the education. We do need to do things with that. And I just simply, I mean, I only had one response for him. I said, well, a lot has changed over the years, so let's get that part straight. But I think the misinformation has kind of taken its hold on individuals that just want to believe 20 and 30-year-old education or misinformation, really. And if they knew more about the details of the disease, where it came from, how it got here, or how we suspected it got here, I think that, more eyes would be open. As a matter of fact, I think most people wouldn't believe it because, it's just one of these things where you repeat a falsehood long enough, loud enough, and with enough, zeal behind it, and people believe it for decades, even if it's wrong. So that's one of the things that inspires me about Seeds of Healing. That's one of the things that inspires me about the state of North Carolina on their Healthy North Carolina or Healthy NC 2030 plan. They've actually identified HIV as one of the health disparities that they want to attack. This overwhelmingly affects, if you're just looking at disparities, your Black and brown individuals and communities. To the tune with the Black community, it's almost, I mean, it's staggering that it's more than 5 times the rest of the population, and Latinos are pulling up maybe 2 to 3 times worse than the overall average, just in our state. And so when that information doesn't get out, you have a lot of people. You know, I think in the state of North Carolina, can't remember my numbers. I think in the nation we're 13% African American, but I think in the state of North Carolina we're somewhere right around 22, 23%. So you got in our Hispanic population, I believe after the 2020 census is somewhere between 5 and 7%. So think about that just for a moment. You have almost 28% of the population that's out there, that could be out there, not knowing this information, not knowing where to get it, believing or being put under the stigma around it if they are identified with it. And by the way, the state just wants us to screen. Right? That's the goal. The health disparity goal is to screen. There's physician offices that don't even know how to screen or don't know where to start with screening. And if it ends up positive, they're almost clueless. You need a Dr. Wallace. You need a Seeds of Healing to help out. You need a health department to step in. But why? This is a healthcare issue and is one that can be managed by a primary care office. Why are we sending folks to the health department? Not that the health department, there's nothing wrong with it, but you know, there are other means. And here's the other thing: being an African American male, because I wear a ring on my finger, it's actually been quoted where some physicians will say, "Well, he's married. We don't need to test him." You know, I'm sitting here thinking, really. One, it's a stereotype for married folks, right? Second, how faithful do you know if I've been to my wife or not? All right. Last time I was tested for it was actually to come work here at the hospital. But how faithful have I been since 2007? You're willing to risk my life on that? You're willing to risk her life on that? If I am in an extramarital relationship, you're willing to risk that person's life on that? And at what point do we say that we value all human beings and that this screening needs to be done for a myriad of reasons? I mean, I'm just giving you just the tip of the iceberg. Do we start testing people and screening people regularly so they can get the care they need before it's too late, while it's treatable, before I get another condition that then you run my blood work? And the reason I'm getting this other condition is because my immune system was so destroyed that I'm getting an unknown disease that mankind has had the cure for centuries. You know, so I think at some point in time, removing those stigmas and getting our practitioners to look at this from a humanity standpoint, you know, from our you know, what they call it, the Hippocratic Oath standpoint. Yeah, we're supposed to be doing that, and we're supposed to be the best at it. So I just ask that we rise to the challenge and that we do what we're supposed to do by our people. And I would even go so far as to extend that beyond HIV, but because that's the topic of our conversation, I'll park it right there.
Well, and Jackson, if I could add something really quickly to piggyback off of what Joe said, because I know that Seeds of Healing has a specific, you know, ministry, if you will, to women living with HIV and AIDS. And, you know, I have not been tested since I was pregnant with my last son, and he will be 20 in September. So you're talking about 20 years ago was the last time that I was tested. And so it's not part of standard screening. And so, you know, God forbid, you know, unfortunately, it's probably very much like LaShonda's mom's story, is that, you know, you don't know until you're sick because there's not regular screening. Even though I've gone for annual blood work for my own health almost every year, it's because it's not part of standard screening. I don't know that information, so and with like a lot of things, the time to catch it is early, not later. And screening is a big part of that. So, but just thinking about the women that Seeds of Healing works with specifically, the sad truth of it is that, most of them probably weren't screened or tested, where it was caught at a time when it would not have worsened. And that's the tragedy of this, especially, is it gets pushed under the rug and not even thought about until it's an issue. And then having access to effective healthcare diminishes after that as well. So,
Yeah,
Absolutely. And sometimes HIV doesn't even have symptoms that you can go by.
that's
It could be
right.
asymptomatic.
That's right.
Mr. Conway, you mentioned earlier that you encountered somebody that had a negative reaction to HIV and further perpetuate the HIV stigma. What is your advice to prospective allies supporting those with HIV?
Well, one is to educate yourself, right? You got to know what those stigmas are and what your allyship actually means. It's not on an individual with that's been diagnosed with HIV to educate you. Trust me that there's plenty of questions that they give. So you really do need to step into the role of educating yourself. And I think the other thing too is to be a support, be someone with that listening ear. I mean, even to the tune of being willing to go to appointments. I think that's paramount because we exist inside of a world that has these social constructs that say certain things are right or certain things are wrong, and those narratives many times need to be challenged. Um, and along with the support and the education is listen, for crying out loud, please listen. Um, and then also help is to find out resources in the area. Um, there are so many things that can be done and so many resources that aren't even there, and it can't always be on the health department. I think that's the other thing that we need to strongly consider is that we have a tendency to put all of our eggs in one basket or put them all on one institution. This is a healthcare thing, so it impacts us all, from an insurance standpoint to or access standpoint to just general support. So if you're going to be an ally, educate yourself, listen, support, be a source of reprieve because of the stigma that's out there. Be a safe space, if you will, as well. So I would say predominantly those kinds of things, but I think the education is the biggest thing because, like I said, when I ran into my colleague who's not in this state, doesn't work in his organization, it was just, and his stance was purely one of faith or religion. And I don't mind sharing a statement that he said. He says, "Well, if they would just get married and be in a monogamous relationship, this wouldn't be an issue." And I'm like, it really struck me as just ignorant, absolutely judgmental, totally full of bias and just ignorant, which is, I couldn't unleash all my knowledge with with a person like that because I'll just be honest with you, it would have gone nowhere. So I just said, send him a couple links, told him to do some research and let me know what he thought. And that was over a month and a half ago. I haven't heard a thing since.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
Having them educate themselves rather than putting the effort on them. They need to
Right.
be self-motivated to do it.
If
Otherwise, they're
they
not
want,
willing to change.
right. If they want to know and they really want to help, and let me say this just real quick. That person's in ministry.
Oh, wow.
And so my background in my faith says that all people bear the image of at least the Lord and God that I serve. So that means I don't get to pick and choose. It's like healthcare, right? We're all human beings, and this organization that I work for provides remarkable care to people, and we don't get to pick and choose who gets that remarkable care. It's every patient every time. And the moment I start letting my bias creep in, it will affect who I believe or who I demonstrate gets that remarkable care. And now there's a problem. That creates disparities. But the disparity started in my head. The disparity started because of the way that I look at people. This disparity started because of the standards that I put on people, instead of just looking at people as people. And that's the industry that we're in. This is what we're supposed to be the best at. And people are just weird. We're all weird. The three of us are weird. LaShonda, who maybe end up watching this, she's definitely weird. But I'm just I'm just saying that we all come with our quirks, and we've got to do a better job at not devaluing people because of the choices that they make. Sometimes they're not even choices. They don't even have a choice. My wife gave the perfect illustration of an individual that, didn't really have a choice in the matter. It happened. And so where do we just say, you know what, this is another human being. I value you, and I'm going to provide remarkable care in whatever shape, fashion, or form that is. Get rid of my biases, get rid of my, the way that I look at the world or my particular lenses, and mitigate those things to provide that more remarkable care.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. I agree 100%. We need to treat everybody with the same amount of respect, regardless of what they do.
That's right.
Is there anything you would like to add, Ms. Conway?
I love everything Joe said, because it just made me think about, the age-old golden rule, treat others the way you would want to be treated. And, if we were more inclined to treat people as neighbors instead of as strangers, then this world would be a lot, better place. I think the only other thing I would just say is we always have to be careful about making sure that we ourselves are not calling ourselves allies. That if someone calls us an ally, then we should just feel honored and humbled and move on. But being an ally is not about what we call ourselves or about a title or badge of honor. It's about how we act and how we treat people. It's supposed to be an unspoken based on evidence. And so I would just encourage anyone out there who, just to love people and treat people as your neighbor. And when you care about other people, it's hard to hate up close. Brene Brown says that. So just stop keeping people at arm's length. And we're all people, and we all have good things about us, and we all have faults. And it's not for us to look at someone else and point fingers. It's up for us to say, how can we come alongside, and what can we do to help you? So
absolutely. I would like to ask about your relationship with Seeds of Healing, if that's okay. When and how did you first hear about Seeds of Healing?
I think that's easy for both of us. Dr. LaShonda Wallace. She's so passionate, and I got invited to a couple of things. I think Cucaloris, was my initial learning when they were doing presentations, is either during Cucaloris or during like an HIV awareness or recognition, and was invited to a talk that she was given, and other activities that happened that same time frame. Was also interviewed by her when she was on the radio, and I know she's more so on social media with a lot of what she does now. That was powerful. Just really fell in love with it. And especially as a health equity director, as I started coming across the data of where HIV was falling. I mean, it had fallen off my radar too. I do want to say that. You know, it wasn't like I've always been in this space. But then as I began to look at it, she was sharing data with me. Then, you know, the state of North Carolina pushed out some data, and I'm going, what in the world is going on that we don't have a handle on this? And then that it's affecting communities disproportionately. You know, it was a nonprofit with a person that I trust and have grown to not just know, but love and care about, that really inspired me to support and do anything that I could. I think the only thing I haven't done is, I know they do like an HIV walk, a 5K, I believe. That's about the only thing I haven't done yet. But yeah, just that relationship piece.
Yeah, Dr. Wallace is a very busy woman. I've seen everything that she's been working on. I couldn't keep up with all of it.
Yeah. None of us can.
What Seeds of Healing activity do you enjoy the most?
I don't know if Tiffany wants to take this one or just me. Okay. I would probably say, you know, anything that's connected to the community. So I'm a big community guy. So like I said, I haven't been to that 5K yet, but I really do need to get there. So just the fact that they stay entrenched in the community and getting the word out, being so active from that standpoint, and partnering. I mean, they do a lot of collaboration too. It's not like Seeds of Healing is out there on their own. They collaborate with agencies, including our own health department. I love that aspect. I think it can't all fall on Seeds of Healing. So that education that needs to happen with physician practices, we got a lot of practices in Wilmington, Brunswick County, Pender County. How do we engage them? Because I know LaShonda is going to talk to the physicians and or physician practices that she engages with either regularly, or, you know, just by happenstance, maybe they come to one of the events that are being offered. But, you know, it's one thing to take it from the education to now practice. Tiffany quoted that earlier. So how do we actually get it in those physician practices and get the questions that I should be getting whenever blood work? Hey, Joe, we need your blood work. Hey, we're going to run an HIV screening on you today too. We just need you to sign here to authorize us to do that, because I think that's pretty much how that goes. And I don't know many people, regardless of their background, who would not want to know that. I mean, I just don't. And so imagine how, you know, the state of North Carolina is challenging us just to screen more. So everything that Seeds of Healing is doing, being active in the community, offering education, offering healthcare events, being present at other healthcare events to get the knowledge and information out about PrEP and other things that can be done, supporting the LGBTQ community. I mean, I think just by their mere presence, what they're doing on social media, what they have access to do at times on the radio, panel discussions that they have. I mean, I'm sitting here going through my head on everywhere that I've seen them insert themselves intentionally, by the way, and it's been extremely impactful. So I would say for Seeds of Healing, keep doing that kind of stuff. And I would put a challenge to all the physician practices out there that you need to get Seeds of Healing, or at least someone out there to educate your staff, and then implement a program where you can get certain protocols implemented for your populations, for your patient populations.
Absolutely. The mere action of just showing you care for this demographic or population or community means a lot.
Yeah.
I do have one more question. What change would you like to see in the world as a result of Seeds of Healing's mission and your support?
Wow. Valuing people, period. And the reason I make it that simple, because if I'm not devaluing another person, that opens up a whole new world to me. That means I'm going to take care and I'm going to treat people with respect, as Tiffany said, my neighbor. I think it's when we devalue people that disparities happen. And that disparity doesn't have to be on the healthcare side of it. It can be in housing, be in education. It can be in anything. But when we value one another, and like Seeds of Healing really is an organization that exemplifies that, all sorts of good things can happen. And yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, I mean, I know we send a monthly support, but it's when I see organizations like that that are not only trying to move the needle, but are actually moving the needle, that support goes up. So, I mean, I know that's our home's intention as we years go by, is how can we support Seeds of Healing more? Sometimes with our presence, you know, and our passion, and sometimes with our pay. I mean, let's just go there, right? Because these organizations don't run themselves for free. And I think we all need to be cognizantly aware of that. And we need to get behind organizations that are moving the needle. I'm tired of supporting organizations that you give funds and or time and talent to, but the problem is still there years later. Let's support organizations like Seeds of Healing that are actually being effective in their mission. So yeah.
Creating results. Oh, sorry.
No. You said it. Create results.
Yeah, creating results from all the work and volunteers here. Okay, I think that's all the questions I had for you. I want to thank you both for joining me today.
Jackson, it's been a pleasure.